Just wanted to make a quick video. I'm going to try and make this not more than 10 minutes. I want to talk about the new 50% deal that they've got here under this Aotearoa and New Zealand. Now, what it means is this. It means that 50% of the New Zealand taxpayers, which are all the Anglo-Saxon people, all right, who number in the numbers of 3 million, will take all of their money and all of their common resources, and that will be given to 50% or a small percentage of the population, and that will pay for them to have private separate healthcare, private separate schools, private separate, you name it, they've got it. And they've got these companies that have come in from America, come in from Canada. Most of them are set up by these quasi organizations set up by the certain churches, certain religions, which I will not want to name because I don't want to be defamed. But here's just a small example of what you're paying for. So have a look here. Here's the headline, and that is what it said. ProCare welcomes 5.9 million in funding boost for Maori and Pacific patients. Now, these Pacific people turned up in the continent of New Zealand around about 30 years ago. Now, our ancestors turned up 400 years ago. Our ancestors have been building this nation for 400 years. And these Pacifica people turned up 30 years ago. They looked at what we had. They looked at how their governments had been corrupt and kept all the money and never shared anything with them. They looked at what we had and they said, I want that. And they came in and they've been taking it. So it used to be Maori and Pākehā. The Maori and Pākehā Maori and Anglo-Saxon people built the country of New Zealand. Now, Canada, if you think you're safe, you're not. Australia, if you think you're safe, you're not. New Zealand's the experiment, and it's coming to you very, very soon. Now, it says here, leading healthcare provider ProCare has today welcomed the confirmation of 5.9 million uplift funding for 19 of the ProCare practices following the announcement from the government of an additional 37 million for some general practices to address the burden of underfunding for, now you see, whenever they want funding, they shove a Maori up front. Maori and Pacific providers and practices with a high Maori and Pacifica populations to enable them to continue delivering high quality services. Now, this is put forward by a woman called Dr. Aisha Verrill. Now, A and Pini Hanari. Now, these two people are heavily invested in this company. See, they're invested in these companies. So they're giving our government money, our taxes, to these private organizations that they are in turn invested in. Aisha Verrill is not, she's an Indonesian woman, and I don't want to say too much on that. But anyway, it's very suspicious. They're getting all this money. So I wanted to go and have a look. So I decided to go and have a look. Who was this ProCare? Who were the directors of it? And what I found out was, you can have a look here. There's Dr. Craig King, Dr. Harley A. Ish, right? Mike Schubert, Donovan Clark. There's one Maori there, and he reckons he's from the Waikato, Tainui, and Ngāti Hini and Ngāti Te Ata. See, what they're doing is they breed in to 3 different tribes, and they're entitled to claims from all 3 tribes. And they can come in on the Pākehā common law side as well. So they're getting dippies every which way they turn. We've got Jodie Sullivan and Dr. Wikitoria. Interesting that she's called herself Wikitoria, because there is a claim by this fake tribe. There's a claim by this fake tribe. Her name is Vicky, not Wikitoria. Wikitoria is actually an Anglo-Saxon tribe and that's been stolen from us by people like her from the Ngāti Kahungunu. So she's up to that. Dr. Francesco Alistair Lawrence, and then this here, Tavita Fanunki. And so I wanted to see, I saw that Tavita Fanunki was the chair of the ProCare Pacific Advisory Committee. And I wanted to know, and he is the chairman of the Pacific Business Trust. He is the chairman of the Ministry of Social Development for Pacific Governance. He is the chairman of Minister Salisi's Pacific Expert Advisory Panel. He is the member of the Police Commissioner of the National Pacific Board. He is raised in Tonga, born God knows where. He's also the executive of a Whānau Trust. He's a Pacific provider of medical, dental, social, public health and education services. This guy is making bucket loads of money on your Anglo-Saxon and New Zealand Maori resources in hundreds of billions of loans that have been stolen from New Zealand to pay for this separate health organisation. Now, then I wanted to go and have a look here at this one here, and then I wanted to see Introduction to Pacific Health. I wanted to see what kind of business that they're doing. So I wanted to just go and have a look. What I found is that once they get the funding, they very quickly drop the word Maori. And they suddenly are only Pacific Health. And then this comes under this fake organisation called the Moana Nui a Kiwa that does not recognise New Zealand as a nation in its own right. They want to have a separate governance, all paid for with your money. Now let's go and see how much they're getting. So they're having all of these discussion groups, and each discussion group can have up to 25 people. And then who should attend? Anybody who's involved with health, anybody from the community sectors. So basically anybody who wants to come from the Pacific community can turn up at these workshops where they can have up to 25 people per session. And then you'll see here, how much do they get paid? They get paid $50 per staff member per student that they get in. So if they pay each student $10 or $15 to come along to the course, and the staff pocket the other $35, you see, and if you did $30, 25 times $30, they're getting like $300, $600. They're getting about $1,000 for $1,000 a day, probably even more. And then who's giving these lectures? Tavita Fanuki, Colin Tukitonka, we've got one Rose Richards, we've got Vilimi Leva, Sione Tuitati here, Moira Smith, that's an islander name, Vilimini Puliloke, and another Moira Smith that does the welcome and introductions. And so there's not a single Maori on there. It's all held by islanders. And then the staff are Sika Panono, and then they're the staff. These are all the staff here that are running it, and then they can have 25 of their mates turn up. Doing the lead, she leads up 22 Pacific Island countries and territories, and she's the head. So they've got New Zealand paying hundreds of millions of dollars for all the health care. We're paying for Papua New Guinea. We're paying for every single island comes under this criteria, and they're entitled to funding for the whole freaking caboodle. It is just out the park, and none of it is for the people of New Zealand who are all the ones that are footing the bill for this whole scam. Now, see if I can have a look here. The organisation ProCare, see if I've kind of done this. Fresh in the Minds, find out more. Fully owned, find out more. That's just all their services. I won't do that one. I don't know what I was going to say here. Now, I wanted to show you in this report here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. I'll do. Right, I'll try and do this for you. I'm going to make just a short video. If you're going to see here, right, it talks about, for these Pacifica people, what is their MRI wait time, all paid for by you New Zealand taxpayers. Their MRI wait time, and you see here there's no Maori on there, only Pacific people, no Maori on there. You've got to have a Pacific ancestry to get into any of these clinics. Sometimes they'll take in the Maori, but not always. So this is for the wait time for Pacific people for an MRI is 4 days. Now let's see what the average New Zealander wait time, the average wait time for an MRI for the average New Zealander is 7 weeks. And they're having failures. People are dying because they can't get into their MRIs. And do you know why? Because none of these people in this private company, all paid for by the millions of dollars of your taxpayer, none of them have to go on a wait list, not even for a week, not even for 2 weeks, not even for 3 weeks. They're going in at 4 days, while your Anglo-Saxon people that are paying for all this bullshit are paying, having a wait time of 7 weeks, okay? So this is the reality of their bullshit 50% governance. There's absolutely no, now I did want to show something here. So I'll see if I could, this was the topics. Oh, this is where the crux is when they apply for the funding. This is the trick here that you want to see. When they apply for the funding, they say that the funding is for Maori and Pacifica. As soon as they get the funding in for Maori and Pacifica, that includes all the island nations, and there are many of them, every single one of them. And so they say Maori and Pacifica, but as soon as the funding comes in, they drop the word Maori, they even drop the word Pacifica, all right? They drop that, and then they use this new word called Pacific Health. It's called Pacific Health in New Zealand, which includes all people, even if they're in New Zealand, even if you're in New Zealand on a temporary visa, you can go in and get an MRI after 4 days, even though you've only been in the country for a week. Whereas New Zealand people have to wait 7 weeks. And then on top of that, and it says, listen to this, it says Pacific Health in New Zealand and other Pacific Island nations. So that means that this organisation, all their government billions and billions of dollars that they're getting, goes to one set of Pacific Health for those Pacific people living in New Zealand, and then they take a huge chunk of that, and then that gets shipped over to each one of their islands, and we New Zealand people have got absolutely no access to how that money's being spent, how that money's being sifted out. We don't know if the Pacific Island people, of which, how many islands are there? So this is going to be, and they are borrowing billions of dollars from America to pay for all of this Pacific Health to give them a top-notch, state-of-the-art health care on borrowed money that your children and your children's children are all going to have to pay for. We will lose our country. Now, if you go to the 1688 Bill of Rights, I'm trying to get everybody onto that. We'll go to our, it's called Bill of Rights, 1688, and if you go under there, that would be illegal. And because this is why they want so desperately to get rid of this document and to shut Kate Floss down. This is my last thing I'm going to say to it. But if you go to your 1688 Bill of Rights, try to make it bigger for you so you can see it. And this here comes under levying money, and it's by levying money for and to the use of the Crown by pretence of prerogative for other time and in other manner than the same was granted by Parliament. And this is just very, very clear that you can see it. Was it in here that I just showed it? You can see it right here. I hope I've got the right place. No, not here. Wrong one. Oh, here. Right, you can see it right here, where when it enters into Parliament, the Parliament agrees to give the money to Maori and Pacifica people, meaning Pacifica people that are born to New Zealand and have ancestry to New Zealand. That's who it's supposed to be for. But once they get the funding, then they just do a loop around. They drop a word here, they drop a word here, they add this word and other Pacific Island nations, and that is how they strip our country of all of our resources while their governments keep all the money and all the revenue from all their tourism, all their mining rights, all their fishing rights. All of that goes into their government, their corrupt government pockets, whilst they are giving all of your money over to those nations to take care of not just Tokelau, Niue and Cook Islands, but all the Pacific Island nations. That includes Indonesia. That includes Papua New Guinea. That includes everywhere. They are siphoning off all of your future generations' resources and monies to provide them with health care, old age pensions, schooling, hospital. That's all going to be gone in a few short years if you don't stop this practice of levying money without consent and giving it to places that was not consented by Parliament. Because and so this is just a hen. They've taken over our Parliament. That's all I'm going to say. It's the end of the video. How many minutes did I get through? I think I've got 20 minutes. All right then, Kate Floss signing out. Finish with a Bill of Rights. Learn this Bill of Rights like the back of your hand, because I'm telling you something. You're going to need it, New Zealand. You are going to need it like you've never needed it before. You're going to need it. It's not gone yet.